this is John, and in this tutorial we're going to look at polymorphism in Java. So polymorphism is a object-oriented concept which has a big name, meaning many shapes, which tells you absolutely nothing at all, but it's actually a pretty simple concept, and there's just one or two tiny little gotchas which we're going to look at. So let's create a new class here, and I'm going to call it plant, and I'm not going to give it any methods or anything, I don't think, because we're not going to need it. And I'm going to also create a new subclass of plant. So let's create one called tree, and I'm going to set the superclass here. I'm going to click browse and go to plant and click OK and finish, and so it's filled in extends plant for me. So I've got one parent class plant and one child class tree, and actually let's get rid of these files from my last project here so as not to confuse things. And I'm going to create a plant class, so let's have a variable to refer to it and say plant equals new plant, and tree equals new tree. Now what polymorphism means in a nutshell is that if you have a child class of some parent class, you can always use the child class anywhere where you would normally use the parent class. So let's take a look at some examples. Let's say I have so I've got up here a variable called plant. Let's just call it plant1. If I say plant2, I could point that, if I want, at plant1, and that's just because this reference here is referring to an object of type plant, and now I'm saying make this reference here refer to the same object that plant1 refers to. So now I've got two references here to the same object. There's only one actual plant object, but because of polymorphism, since tree is a subclass or a child class of plant, I'm guaranteed that I can always use a tree wherever I have a plant. So here I could also say tree, and this is polymorphism in action. And let's say now that tree has a method. Let's give tree a method. Let's give plant a method actually. So all plants can grow, so I'll say public void grow, and I'll just leave it at that. In fact, I'll put a sysout in there, and I'll say plant growing, and let's give tree also a grow method. So I'll override the plant method in tree. I'll go to source, override implement methods grow, and here I'll say sysout tree growing. Now if here I've got a reference pointing to a kind of plant, because tree is a plant. It's a child class of plant, so it is a plant. And if I say plant2 now dot grow, there's no prize for guessing which method will be called, the one in plant or the one in tree, but by all means have a go. See if you can guess. And in fact, the thing that's important here is that the object that plant2 is pointing at is actually this tree. So if I say plant2.grow, because plant2 is pointing at a tree, it's going to use this grow method from tree. So if I click run now, let's see, click run, it says tree growing, because when you actually run the method, what matters is not the variable, it's not the type of the variable, which could be plant or tree or whatever. What matters is the actual type of object containing the actual code, the actual variables, the guts of the thing that's going to run. It's the object that matters, and this object that this reference points at is a tree, which is a kind of plant. So there's one more kind of complication I think I can think of, which is that let's say we've got a method in tree, like let's say public void shed leaves. So this method is handy in autumn, leaves shedding, or fall as you call it in America. So now if I go back to app, if I can say here like tree dot shed leaves, and of course that will just call my shed leaves method that I've just added to tree. So it says leaf shedding, but now we know that plant 2 is also a tree, but if I look at plant 2 and I try to do shed leaves, I'm going to get an error, and in fact the autocomplete would have told me that as well, because there's no shed leaves in this list. And the reason for that is that when you're trying to call a method, what matters is the type of the variable, the type of the reference, because if you look at, for example, in isolation, a variable of type plant, let's call this plant 3. So this is just a null reference because I'm not pointed at any object. That variable knows what methods it should be able to call if it is pointing at an object, and even if you just do plant 3 dot, you can see now down in here we're going to have a grow method. There's no shed leaves method because it's a plant, not a tree. So the variable knows what it should be able to do, and this code incidentally is not going to actually work because I've not initialized it. But my point is here that it's the variable, the type of the variable, that decides what methods you can call. But as we see here, it's when you actually call those methods, you're going to the object, the actual physical, in a sense, object that contains the actual code, and it's that object that's going to run the relevant code. This is polymorphism for you. And if you think about one other common situation where you might want to use this is, let's say you've got a public here static void, let's say do grow, and that takes a plant, call it plant, and all that does is, so this argument is of the plant type, so I can definitely call the grow method. So let's do grow there. Then of course I can do, let's get rid of that, and I'll leave that in. So this code is going to be on caveofprogramming.com, and I'll put a few more comments in here later on to explain this. But now I can do grow, and I can pass there quite happily the tree, because polymorphism guarantees me that wherever a parent class is expected, I can use a child class of that parent, like tree, which extends plant. So if I run that, it's gonna say tree growing down here. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. That's polymorphism. As I say, it's a big word, but it's and when you look at it, it's quite enlightening. It really helps you learn a lot, I think, about how variables work, how references work, versus how objects work. But in essence, it's quite simple. So that's it for this tutorial, and in the next tutorial we're going to look at a topic which is very important, and again will hugely bring on your understanding of references and objects, although it's not that exciting at the same time. We're going to look at upcasting and downcasting. So join me again then, and until next time, happy coding.